If you let them keep everything, then it goes to waste. No, it goes towards rebuilding. No, it doesn't. It goes towards ale and women. We're the ones rebuilding everything. So tax them, get the money to us, and we'll do far more good with it than they will. You presume they have any money to give. Things haven't exactly been booming with most of the men dead. And it's not like tax isn't collected, it just gets used for other things. You are completely delusional. Are you from a different Constantinopolis to me? There's gold flowing in the streets. Then let it flow where it will. Into the sewers, then? The sewers the Senate probably paid for. This is a serious matter, and there is no use being stubborn about it. Gold and grain. That is all the Senate asks for in exchange for additional troops. And you've already got the additional troops, so this is only going to get more awkward. It's up to you to make this empire work again, Septimus. You have half the power and all the money. Loosen your grip and we'll all breathe easier. And you'll return to your camp? One word and I'm gone. Okay, you'll sort the taxes out? Okay, I will sort the taxes out, but I might see to the damned walls first. If only we had all that tax money. I can't hear you. The roar of gold rushing down the streets. Looks rather more like ash, actually. Hello there and welcome back to Fields of Mars. In the previous episode, with the arrival of Eutropius, Septimus was able to take a lot of Sassanid power away from Anatolia and capture some territory for himself. We saw Anicius taking out a Garamantian army at Oxyrhynchus after they surprisingly sallied out but then got surrounded. Julianus made a triumphant return to Attila, slaying Huns and rebels alike along the way. And finally we started a battle at Turonum when an Alaman army attacked, and we decided to take our whole army across a bridge to see if we could hold on the other side of the river. The replay corrupted, but we're continuing on with basically just a grind. The enemy sent some units to challenge us over on our side of the river, but not all of them, and a grind just ensued where we ended up losing our initial units on the bridge, but you can see I prepared a position behind them, and I wanted to draw the enemy forward so we could get a bit more of a surround, perhaps fight the enemy on all sides, still in a contained area though. It didn't really work. Only a few enemies dared come near us, and we took them down with darts, and the rest seemed to be falling back towards the town once again. So my plan of surrounding the enemy failed, but we still have avoided fighting them, and that might be the best thing because the enemy's troops are better than ours. After a while, a unit of half-dead cavalry came to investigate. We threw darts at them to just annihilate them. Then a second unit coming behind wasn't going to have much more luck. I formed all these troops into stationary testudo to give them the anti-cavalry bonuses. They stopped to try and set fire to some buildings, while some more infantry seemed to be coming in behind them, although we'll also see they kind of gave up on this idea of attacking us pretty soon. I'm moving up the archers because among those infantry are some Germanic warband, the Axe troops, and they'll just rip our Legio Comitatensis apart. We probably have enough numbers that it's not a huge problem, but I still wanted to try and rain arrows on those Axe troops and thin them out if we could. Meanwhile, their cav there just killing themselves on the front of the testudo. They're also bringing in the Germanic Spearmasters, who are pretty good as melee combatants, probably still better than the Legio, so we're going to rely on numbers once again. I'm trying here to get some darts into their big blob of troops as well, but it's not going to do all that much because the enemy's armor is so high. So yes, while it looks like the enemy is committing everything to come and attack us, every time I show my hand back on the town side of the river and they realise I've actually still got units over here, they basically move 75% of their men back to come and defend the town. I guess they really don't want to lose the capture point. So because of that, they never really committed to attacking our main group over here. It was just one unit at a time, and we managed to grind them down, taking some decent losses, but the enemy took more losses every time because we were always overwhelming and routing these single units. It was pretty much exactly what we needed to happen, so very kind of the enemy to behave like this. And after a while, they seemed to even give up on attacking us over here entirely. A few units just hung around on the bridge as if they wanted us to not come back into the town, and the rest waiting far behind. I eventually got bored of waiting for something to happen, so decided to try a little bit of trickery over on the capture point. I wanted to see if I could take the town, because the enemy haven't done a very good job of positioning their units to stop me going onto the capture point. So I'm sneaking in here with the cavalry that I had back on this side of the river. They had previously been taking out all of the enemy's crossbows, taking some losses as you can see, doing so, but nothing significant. So we'll go in and try and have this capture point for ourselves. The enemy general was standing there, and he moved his unit to be right at the middle of the capture point as I got close. The question for me was, would he actually attack me if I brought my cavalry to just stand on the edge of the capture point? The nice thing about Scout Equites is one of the invisible stats, capture power, is really high for them. So just putting the very corner of the unit into the circle is enough to capture it, even with a full enemy unit standing inside it. And I was wondering, would the enemy try and stop me from doing this? That unit of swords could just charge my horsemen and I'd have to leave. But they didn't, quite fortunately. So we're going to stand here and just somehow capture the entire town from right under their noses, very literally. Quite nice. And this doesn't really matter because it just gives you a small morale buff having the capture point. It doesn't really affect the result of the battle. But this is a nice moral victory, just going to humiliate the elements. And one of their units actually shatters because they lost the morale buff from having the capture point there. I think they must have only had a couple of troops left in it. So really there's nothing left to their force. I actually could have just moved forwards and killed them all at this point, but I was just going to wait for a time of victory because I was feeling lazy. However, it wasn't actually a victory, it was a draw. I presumed you could only get a draw if both sides didn't really gain or lose anything in terms of the balance bar by the end of the fight. But actually it's just if the attacking side doesn't explicitly win, it's a draw rather than them losing. But if you look at what the actual result is, it certainly looks like they lost the battle. Basically their entire army's dead and we didn't lose any full units. So it went as planned. The only difference is that the enemy siege will keep going because it technically wasn't a loss. Their army doesn't retreat afterwards. So that's going to inflict a bit more damage to our buildings for being under siege. But of course once the next turn starts, we can just get the garrison to challenge them, and with only a couple of units they will run away. So it all worked out in the end, not quite as intended but still fine. We've stopped their invasion, and Uther's gambit from the last episode of not going to defend Turonum didn't have any costly repercussions. Considering how much we learned along the way, I think we can safely chalk that one up as a victory.
But the Romans still control these lands.
Not the greatest of victories or anything, but still worthy of a little celebration. A little song, perhaps?
We were forced to retreat in shame.
Yes, but all things considered, if you look at the bigger picture, isn't it the case that in the long run we've given ourselves that slight edge? This was at least a step in the right direction.
We lost nearly all our men, all our supplies, our banners.
I know, but I'm sure the enemy lost out as well. I mean, it's not like we were defeated. Look, let's call it a draw. It was a draw. That's perfectly fair. The new turn came with some bad news. The Gaetulians have declared war on us, joining the Garamantians. These are the guys who control the western part of the northern coast of Africa, so tons of new settlements right here are now hostile to us, and they're bordering us, they're closer to us than the Garamantians. They can attack us right now with their fleet from Carthage if they want to, so that's bad news. Plus, we were trading with them, so the loss of that trade agreement has once again put our income back into the red. To deal with this, I decided we need to downsize the navy sitting in Alexandria. Since it was not doing very much, I thought we might as well make it a bit smaller. There's not many opportunities to use it right now because the enemy have naval superiority in most cases. Their navies are better than ours, so we don't necessarily want to have a naval battle with our opponents. I could actually have brought that navy over to take part in this little fight, but I didn't remember to, and perhaps it wouldn't have worked anyway, because we're going to do a fort battle here, which I presume doesn't let you use the navies, even though they do show on the balance bar. But anyway, the plan here, as you might guess, is to attack the weaker of these two armies. Because they're both in forts, I had the choice of attacking either. I'm going to attack the one that's just loads of trash spears, so the stronger army will come in as reinforcements, and we'll try to intercept them on the edge of the map and take them out when they're out of formation. The plan failed, instantly because I got it wrong in terms of where the enemy are coming on. I was so confident they'd come in either on the horizontal or just below it and set up to receive that, and they came in above the horizontal. So they're not too far away, but we're not going to catch them right on the edge when they're super vulnerable. So now we'll have to scramble to set up a formation between them and the fort, which they're currently rushing towards. Their general came out ahead of the army, which was nice. He gets blindsided by Anicius coming in with the Praetorian cav, just saving his legionaries from taking that charge on the front, and now the rest of our cav will come in to surround that enemy general. A nice opportunity to just take out their commander at the start. We'll send infantry in as well to just swarm him and hope that he can't possibly escape, and try to set something up to deal with the rest of their army. I sent a couple of units of cav behind the enemy's force because they have all of these Kurdish archers and onagers which we needed to take out, but that was easy enough. But when it comes to the archers, they're a big threat. We've seen they can annihilate legionaries with their archery fire, and they're pretty good in melee as well, so those cavalry are almost just being sacrificed to keep them busy, keep them distracted, and keep them in a melee, not firing if possible. Meanwhile, the rest of the army currently in an absolute mess as a result of focusing on taking on that general, although it did work, as we can see there. We're trying to reform it and get something ready as all of the enemy's infantry come in. Not very neat, not very good lines, and some of my men are actually charging right through the lines to engage the enemy in front of it right there. Absolute chaos. My cavalry can now, though, swing around and take part in that fight against the archers, being done with taking out the general, and the Praetorian cav will have an okay time here. Their stats are high enough to cut through Kurdish archers slowly but surely. Little group of Kurdish archers that got separated over there gets surrounded and destroyed by some more cav. And here, my unit of cavalry that was distracting them from the very beginning of the fight is about to be defeated in that melee, but my legionaries arrive just in time. So that sacrifice of the cavalry was basically to keep these men still. Now we'll be able to fight them in a more advantageous melee fight. The rest of the fight's going to slowly turn into a surround because the enemy are bunched up, the chaos fading away. We're getting a more ordered battle line now, although the enemy are kind of breaking through our centre with their troops here. These elite Dilamite infantry that the Sassanids field pretty much as standard as their frontline infantry are comparable to legionaries in strength, so they are dangerous. The rest of their trash spear army from the fort looking there like it wants to come and join the fight, but it's so far away that it can't really get here before the fight's over, especially because we had the enemy surrounded and their general was dead. They're pretty easy to rout. There you can see some horse archers just leaving after being fired at by my crossbows, very nice. So everything routed was mostly destroyed because it was surrounded, all except this unit here, which fought on despite being totally surrounded and fighting tons of units at the same time, so they were particularly courageous, but we'll get them in the end. And now that we've got order back, we can make a nice straight line to receive their spear charge. They have tons of numbers here, but the troop quality is low, so I'm hopeful that our men will be able to defeat the enemy if we just get them to charge us right in the front, and that's what we're doing, although the line that I made was kind of thin in some places because many of our companies were damaged. To make our line wide enough to not be outflanked by the enemy's advancing line, we had to have some very thin parts of it, which is never nice. They did have these camels attacking right on the end, somewhat attacking our spearmen, so that's nice. They'll probably take them out, and they have a few units that are going to attempt to flank that won't last long under our crossbow and arrow fire. Overall, this part of the fight looks like it's going to go much more neatly than the previous one. A nice straight line engagement will get the cavalry to come in and smash the enemy from behind, just in time in this case, as we hit the enemy just as they shatter our legionaries on the front, although they were also replaced just in time by my one reserve unit that I'd kept for just such an occasion. We've also got these crossbows who have snuck behind the enemy's lines to rain bolts into the back of their units. This is particularly effective. We can see the pile of bodies on the floor here. Big casualties, going to cause that unit to rout, so that's nice. Every time we rout a unit, we'll be able to use the stuff freed up on our side to surround more enemies, so this is going to quickly spiral out of control until most of the enemy is in big trouble and are just running all over the place trying to avoid us. The line broken down entirely. Chaotic once again. The enemy general even broke through the centre, probably because the centre was completely open at some point, and is fighting with Anicius. Not going to work out for him. Anicius' cavalry is better than his, and we have all his infantry support nearby. We'll take him out. The rest of his army is going to face the same fate. They're just running about basically, trying not to engage our superior troops, I guess, but that's not going to work. We've even got the ranged advantage, so we can just shoot them without engaging them, but just ploughing cavalry into them seems to do the job as well. We'll turn any routing units into shattering units. This is going to bring the fight to an end. So we've made a nice pile of bodies on the floor after that extremely messy engagement, but I think in the end it all went our way. We took out 2 armies, and although a few units on our side were significantly damaged overall, we're still good to go. It's a heroic victory for Onisius, yet another one that he's managed to rack up.
Septimus wants me to gather up a tithe to send to Rome for him. He would call it a tithe. Didn't even ask how I was. Quite rude. I think he's finally going to try and get into the history books, as if anyone is going to care about him in comparison to Dad. Can't save Rome again. Can't save Constantinopolis again. Can't top that, so why bother? If the Senate wants tithes, they should come and collect it from beneath all the bodies themselves. I'll send them a piece of rubble from every town and see if they get the message. Anyway, I think we've earned the money. Let's go back to the city and see if they've got any more of those weird animals up from the desert. It'll probably be under attack by the time we get there, so we can call it a business trip.
So here are the results. I thought I'd lose a unit there since one of the legionary squads was so heavily damaged, but they got away with it just about. We'll be able to replenish back up to full strength eventually as a result. The kills across the board, very high. I was just checking to see who got all the kills, and it was everyone is the answer, well distributed. The enemy's side will certainly not be replenishing up to full strength anytime soon. We totally wrecked them. The Lakhmid's going to retreat over near Alexandria. We'll have to chase after them later. Right now I just went after the large other 2 forces in order to resolve it to death, but that doesn't matter. Let's take a look at this opportunity that presented itself. I noticed that Pontus had recently sacked Trapezus to the east of Sinope. It's owned by Arria, and Arria's forces seem to be busy doing something or other around the place in the Black Sea. So because of that, Eutropius can actually march on Trapezus right now. I was going to bring him over to help out with Septimus and try and team up to do something against the Sassanids, but Septimus is going to be left high and dry. Eutropius has got himself a nice little chance here for a free conquest. There was no garrison, so we can just walk straight on in and take it. So that's all well and good, and Trapezus is actually part of Cappadocia, so it would be nice to occupy this. It will help us keep Caesarea Eusebia, so helping Septimus indirectly. Now I've also lost all my money because of the corruption increasing, and I need to adjust that situation if I can. I notice I can tax this place and be okay for food, but it's only because when you're in autumn you get this giant food bonus that is slightly misleading, so you need to be careful about adjusting things during autumn. I actually went round and just did a massive set of taxation changes and general building maintenance, and we've actually got to the situation now where I'm making tons of money, so that's all well and good. It's mostly because I can now tax Constantinopolis. Lots of places are going to rebel because of the fact I'm taxing them, but I'm willing to let public order decline for now to build up some cash. We definitely need cash to help out with establishing a more permanent foothold here in Anatolia. Now I'm currently looking at Aurelianus, who has opportunities to go and attack Myra to the south there, and the Sassanid High King happens to be there as the admiral of a fleet. I went over to besiege it. At first I was thinking, yeah, we'll go and take down the High King, but I immediately remembered that's not how it works. If you force a navy to land, the officer leading the navy doesn't land with them for whatever reason. They kind of go away in the ship afterwards, so even if you wipe out the unit, it doesn't count as defeating the officer themselves. So because of that, there's not a huge point in trying to take out this navy by forcing them to land, because we don't need the navy to not be here. Essentially, they'll just build another one if we kill it. So I'm just going to leave that place under siege and see if the navy goes away, because if they do, we can just take the settlement for free really quickly and then move on to do something else. Septimus needs to step out of his town to push away that Arria force. Now it retreats to the south, and this also presented a potential opportunity because they're in range of Tarsus' garrison. So if I attacked Arria now, we could fight that garrison in the field and then probably just take Tarsus immediately afterwards. The question was, do I actually want to do that? I was worried because there are loads and loads of Sassanids around the place. They've got all these stacks waiting next to Tarsus, so I thought if I went and occupied it, I might just get attacked by 4 stacks at once and not be able to hold it, especially after taking the losses from the battle. So because of that, I abandoned the idea and we'll just see what happens. Over with Uther, I've got this scout out to try and find out what exactly the Alamans have nearby, and we quickly see they have 2 stacks in range of Lugdunum. That means I probably can't move out of Lugdunum right now because there's only 4 semi-damaged units as the garrison, so Uther needs to hold this position. Even his stack of Western Auxilia Palatina may not be enough to hold against 2 Alaman stacks, which are going to be mostly Germanic Spearmasters. And beyond that, even more forces await from the Varinians as well, so just lots of strength in this area, and we are really hoping that they won't concentrate it too much and attack us. The Sassanids looked like they were going for Septimus there. They called that off and then just sail away. I don't know what that was about. Maybe they were intimidated by him or didn't expect him to be there or something and just ran away and did something else. So nothing came of that potential threat. The Lachmids are once again attacking Berenice. Still nothing we can do, and the balance bar was really generous here, I thought. We only had 2 units against their whole army, and it gave us a little bit of a chance, which I thought was nice, but we lost and they sacked the settlement. Now we have to make a general replacement, which is always bad news when you have to make one of these. Something bad's happened, and I recognized the army name. I was trying to work out who it was I could be replacing here, but I realized you can get the sneak preview of what's happened if you look at the event messages and you're lucky in how they've ordered themselves, and we can see there, right on the end, that Aurelianus has died of natural causes. That is what this is about. At least it was natural causes. He's lived a life. That means he could very well have died of much more violent causes than that. So we'll replace him with some level 1 Senate officer, Cullio I think his name was, and that's a bit of a dangerous replacement to make because he's going to be right on the front line with one of our main armies, and that army's going to lose all of its bonuses and lose campaign movement range as a result of this. I'm just going to leave him here to continue the siege, but this is going to be a big blow overall to our campaign in this area. The news turned my spirit, to be sure. What better sign can the gods give that your time is limited than to have time itself drag away the life of your younger brother? I noted their message. I knew exactly what it entailed. I sat in villas and palaces, celebrated and praised without halt, while the job I had promised to do was unfinished. Somewhere on the edge of the world the Hun was still gathering strength, and my strength could only wane. There was no misinterpreting the portents. The time was nigh for a final march of the great Western Consul, a march to put an end to the miserable spectre of Hunnic invasion once and for all. After all, who else could possibly succeed in such a venture but me? Yes, indeed, Julianus is on the move once again. We're going back east. The first stop will be Sapirne, where we need to take down a rebel army that's threatening to capture our little colony there. And then, as he mentioned, we're going to go on to try and finish off the Huns in the corner of the map. Now, as the next turn comes about, the Gaetulians, who we hoped would just leave us alone, don't leave us alone. They come over to Palma with an army that's curiously on the verge of destruction already. So that was kind of them to bring all of these half-dead units to attack us. They do have a full navy, but it's going to have to land, so it won't be as strong as it looks. Now this is one of those battles where scout equites just kill everything, and it's the sort of battle that I generally don't show anymore in this series because it happens quite a lot against rebels pretty much all the time. This is just a case where it actually happened against another faction, and we're just going to do the business. I didn't even bother filming the replay, and the footage itself has a horrible audio desync as well, just to hammer home the fact that we shouldn't bother covering this battle in the series. So yes, you just rear attack things like I'm doing here, taking out some slingers and hitting all the half-dead spear units makes them rout. So really no trouble at all, just had to make their navy land once the army was dead. And the main drama of this battle actually came from trying to take out their siege crews, funnily enough, because they glitched out while trying to get off the ships. And because they weren't fully off the ships technically, they don't count as an operating land unit yet. so land units can't target them, and that means we can't kill them very well. We have to kind of walk into them and then just position our formation inside theirs, and then the men will sometimes fight each other by chance, but it's very much less effective than just targeting them normally. So this took a long time to sort out, gradually working through these glitched siege crews. Here's the reason they're glitched: just a couple of guys standing on the boat watching their comrades get killed over there, and they're just shouting back in outrage, and my men slowly fighting them. I guess they see themselves as just taking a nice walk on the beach and occasionally encountering a hostile passerby. Anyway, so we dealt with that in the end. A close victory. I think we killed the enemy's king there, took out most of their army, took out a load of the fleet as well. Really taught them a lesson, and what's left of their army gets deleted there afterwards as a result. Very nice indeed, and the new king out at sea there, sitting in the boats, probably heard of what just happened, and he is not going to hang around very long to bother threatening us. He is going to take his forces away, along with his agent, and my hope was that that would be the end of our war with the Gaetulians, because we've thoroughly embarrassed them, and they probably won't want to come at us again. The Garamantians clearly setting up for an attack on Alexandria there. We'll have to get ready for that. And the Lakhmids, once again, their obsession with Berenice continues, coming for another attack against our half-dead garrison, and once again they are just going to sack it. They can't be making any money off this. They're just enjoying the glory of constantly technically getting battle wins. Now at Iconium, one of the settlements we took from the Sassanids in Anatolia, some rebels came in for an attack. We only have a few men in garrison, but the balance bar was so far in their favour, and I was just like, no, that can't be true. Like, this enemy army isn't very well composed to take a settlement, so I wanted to fight this one just to prove the balance bar wrong. So let's have a very quick look at what went on. The enemy are mostly cavalry, so they're just going to charge the front of a couple of our legionary units, and they're in stationary testudo, so they'll have that bonus against cavalry and defence against charges. So once they were just stuck there fighting with them, I came around up onto this raised area with some of the Legio to just throw darts down into the crowd of cavalry. A lot of them are armoured, they're cataphracts, so it may not do all that much, but the hope was that this would thin them out and stop them from eventually hacking through us in this melee. But even then, the melee might be winnable because of the bonus against cavalry that Legio get, and because we don't have insignificant numbers here. I had to swap my units around a little bit since we needed to use all the ammo we could to do this, and it seemed to be working. The enemy numbers were dwindling under this attack, especially in their general's unit, because the general wasn't so armoured, so we could damage him, and of course killing the general will win us this battle automatically. You can see the enemies are already wavering at this point. It seemed like we had this. The announcer guy says it's turning in our favour, and at just about that moment the enemy general dies, all the cavalry just start running away, and we've got this. So we've proven that balance bar wrong, and the onager they had in the far distance there very mercifully just ran away, otherwise I would have had to run across the map to go and take it out, so that's going to save me some time. Very nice, we have kept Iconium. The rebels just reappeared instantly because the public order was so bad. We're just having rebels all the time. Rebels are all over the place in Anatolia, and we need to take them out. Septimus stepping in to get started on that, killing another group near Iconium there. And I think there's even another group just off to the north. Yeah, there is over there. So that's just going to keep happening. We'll stay around and take them down. Things might stabilise eventually, although really we need to take more territory in the area to make that possible. So now, moving on, we've got lots of invasions brewing, basically, during this end-turn sequence. We saw the Almans coming over the Alps there with a couple of stacks towards Octojuron, so maybe they're going to go for a different angle of attack and not go into Gaul. The Sassanids have forces coming up behind us there, looking like they're going towards Thracia. Maybe they just want to take out the Asian Romans. The Huns are doing something. They've got a couple of generals moving around near Italia. The Angles are coming into our territory with loads of forces. They're not at war with us, but this is a pretty suspicious move, suffice to say. Not sure where else they could be going right now. Aran forces also moving through our territory, also not at war with us, but who knows what they're planning. The Garamantians continuing to set up for an attack. Looks like it's going to be a simultaneous attack on Alexandria and Octojuron at this point. They've got forces all over the place and we can't possibly stop them all. And speaking of can't possibly stop them all, the Lakhmids continuing their project of attacking Berenice over and over again. So we've definitely got some work ahead of us in the next episode by the looks of things. The de facto territory of the Empire was now becoming the official territory, as the authority of the Senate grew on the frontier. The increased unity brought a great centralized pool of resources for the military to draw from, although much of the money was in fact siphoned away to deal with religious matters. Anatolia was far from being favoured by the gods of Rome, and the shrines and festivals the empire paid for didn't make much of a difference in this respect. But they had a spiritual duty to pay for it, and so they would continue to do so. The people of Anatolia were bemused at best. They had no interest in a state that wanted to talk about religion. They wanted a state that would stop the world's warring empires from constantly invading their homes. So that is all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and special thanks to the OfficiallyDevin patrons for making this episode happen. We've got some big gains, some big losses, and we'll be taking some big risks in the next episode of Fields of Mars.